morning, y'all. We're on the home stretch. You having a good week so far? Good. I love the alternative. I usually try to come. Last night I couldn't make it, which is a bummer, but I got some cool stories that I heard about from it. I think maybe the most impressive one, I'm still not quite sure if this is true. I think my friend might have been messing with me. I've heard a rumor that some girl came up here and blew up balloons with her nose. Is that true? Where are you? Yeah, you are right there. Wow. Like, I feel like we need to make up a word. Like, gross and awesome together is grossome. So that's grossome. Like, that's cool, though. I'm impressed that you can do that. And I think the alternative is always entertaining, you know? And part of what strikes me about it every year is, like, it's voluntary. Y'all signed up for this. And sometimes I think, what if it wasn't? Like, what if the way the alternative works is we made you all come in the room and we were like, okay, you got to come up here and spin some flags, and you got to pretend like you're Hugh Jackman in The Greatest Showman, and you got to, like, not only just flip a bottle, but hype it up like it's the first time it's ever been done, and just like 3 of you randomly have to come up here and blow up a balloon with your nostril. Like, what if we did that? And what if it was high stakes too? Like, not to be weird, but what if you were going to get busted up if you didn't do it? What if we challenged you and you said no, then the, like, penalty was we're going to lay you down on the ground and just, like, drop this chain on you. You know what I'm saying? Like, first of all, that's really weird. Also, that's really creepy. That's like bondage. That's like slavery. Nobody's going to put up with something like that, right? Like, nobody wants to be chained. We are a people who pursue freedom at all costs. No one wants to be told what to do. We are the kind of people who are going to do everything we can to maintain our independence and to be free, right? Now, I'll admit that I might have a little bit of a tough goal today. Now, I'm happy with the material that we got to cover because I think it's important stuff. But the only way I know to lovingly lead you through the content of our day and to set things up properly is to get you to think this morning, to ask you to exercise your mind muscles. My goal this morning is not so much to capture your heart or imagination or to continue making you laugh or anything of that nature. My goal really is pretty simple, and it's to get you to think. Now, I know day 4 is the fun day. Like, you've already heard about it. We got extended rec. We're going to have a good time this afternoon, and I want you to have a good time this afternoon. I want you to cut loose and have fun and just take it easy together. But at the end of the day, I also want you to know that today we're going to be asking you to continue to make hard decisions. And the decision that we're going to place before you, whether you choose to be a person who obeys God or a person who rebels against God, really is a decision that changes everything. And so for your own sake, you probably ought to start by thinking it through. We're talking about God today, and we're talking about obedience. And therein lies part of the problem, because John in his letter makes a big deal about obedience. I think he comes not even comes close. I think he very clearly suggests to us that to love God is to obey God. Now let's go ahead and read the verse that we're studying this morning. Open up your Bibles to 1 John chapter 5. I want to read, you read a little bit of it. I want to read the context of this for you. 1 John chapter 5, we're just going to read the first 5 verses. So here's what John writes as we approach the end of his book. He says in 1 John 5:1, everyone who believes, there's that word again, that Jesus is the Christ is born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves his child as well. This is how we know that we love the children of God, by loving God and carrying out his commands. And his commands are not burdensome, for everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world? Only the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. This is the word that we're going to be unpacking together today. And you're probably already getting to a point with 1 John where when we read a text, you kind of think to yourself, I'm pretty sure we talked about that. I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but as the letter of 1 John unfolds, it's not like John just keeps bringing in a bunch of new ideas. It's more that he just keeps cycling back to the same ideas over and over and over. And sometimes we think, yeah, John, we talked about this. And I think John would say, yeah, well, you tend to forget. Here at this point, John, in 1 John 5, the beginning of this chapter, he combines the 3 tests that he's been walking through throughout this letter. Remember, in 1 John, you have this other group over here who are telling the followers of Jesus, if you want to be a real follower of Jesus, stop believing those things and doing those things, come join our group. And they're saying, I thought we were in the right group. And John writes to say, here's how you know. Remember this? And so we have these tests, the belief test and the obedience test and the love test. He walks through all of them in chapter 2, obedience, belief, and love. In chapter 3, he revisits obedience and love. In chapter 4, he doubles down on love and belief. And here in chapter 5, he brings them all back together in this one compact paragraph. It's sort of like when you think about being a follower of Jesus, belief and obedience and love are just all part of it. It's like if you were to describe a rose. You would describe the color red, and you'd probably talk about the thorns, and maybe you'd talk about the smell. And if you take any part of that out, you're not actually fully describing a rose. John is telling you what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and he's putting all of these elements together for us. And we started the week by dabbling a little bit, talking about love, and we're going to come back to love tomorrow. We spent yesterday talking about belief, and so today we got to talk about obedience. And I say gotta because of all the four-letter words that could get you into trouble in our world, I'm not sure any elicits as much of an allergic reaction for us as this little four-letter word obey, O-B-E-Y, obey. I'm not sure if any is as universally despised as this one. And I guess maybe to say it's universally despised is a slight exaggeration. We're fine with obedience if we're talking about little kids or dogs. You know what I'm saying? Like we tell them to obey. But you're at a point in your life when obedience is going to be less and less of a thing, and it's a word and a concept. Somebody telling me what to do, it's a word and a concept that we're less comfortable with as we get older and, become more independent. So we've talked about stepping into the light. Okay, I get that. Like I like light more than darkness. I'm good with that. We've talked about believing and trusting in God. All right, that's a little bit tougher, but I understand that some things are true and some aren't. And the Bible suggests to us that this is the truth about God that we trust in, and the things that we learn about Jesus here are the reliable things that we should believe. I understand that, but obey? I dare you to do something this week. Maybe this week, maybe next. I dare you to just go around and do some obedience experiments of your own. Just start bossing people around. Just start walking around being like, hey, give me some coffee. Hey, rub my feet. Heel, sit, fetch. Just start barking out orders. Now, I'm not responsible for the results of this, okay? So if you end up at the end of the week with like a black eye, or let's put it this way, if you end the week more single than when you started the week, that's on you. But that might be what happens. Because suggestion, we're fine with suggestion. You can give me your suggestion. Advice, I'm okay with advice. I can take it or leave it. Command, you telling me what to do? Good luck with that. Obey your own desires and nothing else. That's what they are telling you. You're the governor. You're in charge. Obey your thirst. If you think something is true, then it's true for you. If you think something is right, then who is anybody else to tell you otherwise? You got to think for yourself and decide what you think is best. Follow your heart. Follow your intuition. And especially when it comes to religion. In our world today, when it comes to religion, the idea of obedience is perceived as a dangerous idea. And probably for good reason. There have been a lot of corrupt men through the years who have asked people to do some pretty horrific things in the name of God. And unfortunately, deceived people have listened to them and have done some things that they will eternally regret. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what we're discussing today. I'm not talking about you doing what I think you should do, or what Nate, or what Josh, or what anybody else here who's a human alone says that you should, or what CIY thinks you should do. We're talking about you reading this book with clear eyes and a submitted heart, and never knowingly acting against what it teaches. Don't just listen to me or us. Listen to him. Obey him. If you say you love God, but you don't do what he says, you don't really love him. That's the line that John draws in the sand. If you say you trust God, but you don't, in the process of your life, regularly obey him, you don't really trust him. It actually is that simple. It's hard though, isn't it? Today is all about dropping the chains that are keeping you from obeying God. And Hannah hit this pretty well last night, talking about the different things that stand in between us and God. What is it that this chain may represent for you? She talked about maybe it's a relationship. Right? Like I remember last summer I was at a camp, and I was, after the sermon, this was on a similar theme like this. It was a call to obedience, and this young girl came up to me, and she was a pretty sharp girl, and we were having a conversation about just life, and she was saying, okay, so here's the deal. I don't know why the Bible tells me I can't have sex with my boyfriend. She was very honest and open about it. I said, all right, well, here's what the Bible says, and here's why, and I kind of laid it out for her. The Bible says that sex belongs in one context, and here's some of the reasons why. And she just looked at me like, yeah, but I don't buy it. Like Like, I'm not sure if this is something I want to do. And I asked her, I said, I don't mean to be invasive, but like, are you asking if you like can do something you've never done, or that you guys can continue something you're doing? And she said, no, we've been having sex and I don't want to stop. And it's not so much about like the sex, it's just if we stop, I think I'm going to lose him. I don't want to lose him. And I said, I get that, but God calls you to obey. Maybe for you it's some of the things she talked about. Maybe it's an alcohol or a pill addiction or a porn addiction. Maybe it's not something like that though. Maybe it's like lying. Maybe you're a person who just regularly doesn't tell the truth. Or maybe you like tell the truth, but you tell hard truths in order to hurt other people. I don't know what it might be for you. For still others, it takes me back to something Jaron said a couple nights ago. It is a matter of God telling you to do something and you not listening. I remember 2-3 years ago, I was at a Move event just like this one, and I was talking to this young man. His name was Adam, no need to hide it. And he was wrestling with whether or not God was calling him to serve him in ministry, to be a pastor. And I always step back on this and I say, listen, it's not my job to tell you what vocation, what career you should pursue. You got to listen to God and do what you're supposed to do. But I asked a number of questions of him, and it became pretty clear to him, and to me, honestly, that this is something God was calling him to do. But he knew that it was going to cost him. Sharp kid, scholarship lined up, whole 9 yards. I actually got an email from his mother the next week, not too pleased with me for suggesting that he might need to consider going to Bible college and following this path. Now, I don't know what your path is, and it's not about this one or that one, but here was a young man in a situation precisely where some of you are in. And honestly, if you ask me my opinion, he maintained the chains because he wasn't willing to give up what he needed to give up in order to do what God was calling him to do. So at the end of the day, this chain does represent for all of us whatever is standing in between us and full obedience to God, not just today. Not just walking up in front of the stage. And I don't mean to demean it, because walking up in that light is huge, huge. And ripping off something off the board we had down here last night is huge. And committing yourself to commit to God is huge. I'm talking about like as a life course of action. This represents whether or not obedience to you is worth it, is a good idea. Man, if the Bible wants to make a big deal about this, I just can't help but keep coming back to the fact that it's going to have a hard time staying popular. And yet the Bible doesn't intend to bend on this. To trust God is to obey him. To follow God is to obey him. To love God is to obey him. It makes sense too. Look, let's say you're learning piano, and let's say you do some research and you get a piano instructor and say, okay, you sit down on the bench and you hold your hands like this. And what if you're like, actually, I was kind of thinking I wanted to play like this, like with my knuckles backwards. I think that'd be pretty cool, right? That'd be neat. Or like, I'd like to be the first guy that learns how to play the piano with my eyes closed. Your teacher would look at you like, do you want to play piano or not? Well, let's raise the stakes a little bit. Anybody in here been skydiving? Anybody want to go skydiving someday? Okay, a lot of you, yeah. Like imagine if you're doing the skydiving thing and it's your first time where you're going solo and the instructor's like, okay, when it comes time to release the chute, I want you to pull that green cord. You see the green cord? Pull the green cord. Don't pull the yellow cord, pull the green cord. And what if you say to them, actually, so here's the thing, I was wondering, so like green, not really my thing, yellow, sort of my favorite color. So when we get up there and I'm falling, would it be cool if I pull the yellow cord? Your instructor would look at you like you're crazy. No, it wouldn't be cool if you pulled the yellow cord. Not if you want to maintain your life. Just do what I'm saying. Sometimes I think we look at God and he says, pull the green cord, and we say, I don't like the green cord, how about the yellow one? But if you're going to let God take you where he wants you to go, and where I truly believe, from what I can tell looking in your faces and watching what you're doing, if you're going to let God take you where I truly believe you want to go, you got to hand over control. And what if this is a great deal? What if this is actually the best offer you could possibly receive? What if your intuitions can't be trusted? What if your heart deceives you? What if you crave ultimately destructive things? And what if he really is strong enough and wise enough and caring enough to lead you well? Let me put it like this. What if God's best for you really is the best for you? What if obedience is the only reliable path to lasting happiness and authentic freedom? What if God is not setting us up to fail, but actually setting us up, putting us in position to win? I was talking to Josh, the guy who's leading worship, before the service today, and we were talking about how 1 John's such an interesting book because you keep coming back to the same themes over and over again. Like, what's the difference between stepping into the light and believing and committing and obeying? And the answer is they are all kind of similar. But I love what he said. He said, you know what 1 John, it does is it really forms in us a Christian memory. And what he means by that is it shapes us with certain habits that are going to enable us to become a certain kind of person. And I couldn't help think about our kids. My kids and Josh's kids are friends with each other, and they all like to play, and it's super fun to watch them. And we also watch our kids do crazy things. And when I think about obedience, I remember this time when Claire was just a little baby. She's a big 8-year-old girl now, right? She's all grown up. When she was a little baby, she had these huge cheeks. They were like jowls, and she wore this like pink little diaper thing. And I remember one time I was sitting in a chair, and she was standing over about 6 feet away from me, and she was looking at an electrical outlet. You know what an electrical outlet is, right? And I saw her looking at this thing, and I know what's coming, and she raised her hand up just like this. And I say, Claire, and she puts her hand back down. She stood there for a second, didn't turn around and look at me, still back to me, I'm back there, and she raised her hand up just like this, and I said, Claire, she put her hand down. She did it a third time, and after she obeyed the third time, she turned around, and she started walking toward me all happy and excited because she had obeyed, and she got like about 6 inches from me, right? So she's right by me. The wall's way over there at this point, and she just stares at my face. And she doesn't take her eyes off of me. And here's what she does. And I think that's what we do sometimes. Right? Like, I want to obey you, God, but I'm not quite sure. Like, there's a part of me that wants to reach back here because I'm not quite sure if you're holding out on me or if you're putting me in a position to win. And that's what I love about 1 John chapter 5. You might not have caught it because the English translation obscures it a little bit, but did you see the word overcome in there? Did you see that? It says the commands of God are not burdensome, because they enable us to overcome. Or you see the word victory in there? Same word. It's used 5 times in this section. It's the word Nikao or Nike. You know, you get Nike shoes named after the goddess of victory in the ancient world. And what John is saying is, it's not hard to obey God because when you obey God, you win. Not just in the future, but now. To obey God is to already have won the battle that we find ourselves in, whether we want to be in it or not. So culture may confuse you, or peer pressure may pull you in. You may even be threatened by the demonic. Satan himself might try to step in your way. But if you've become a person for whom obedience just is what you do, you've won. And it is not hard to sweat and bleed when you know that victory is sure. So to be clear, here's the irony that we're considering today. You find yourself chained, and sometimes it feels like obedience to God is the chain. You are being told what to do after all. And so you get to a point where you're like, I'm just tired of it. I'm just going to throw off the chain. And I'm going to do whatever I want to do, or I'm going to do whatever the world says is successful. I'm going to do what my friends are doing. And honestly, it feels nice for a time because you can loosen up a bit. Feels like you've taken a weight off, but you convince yourself that you've thrown off the chains when really you've just moved them around. It's a false victory. It's a temporary fix. It doesn't actually work. They're like, yeah, you feel better for a little while, but it's only for a little while. And truth be told, the only answer is to let go and look up. Because you've got 2 options when you go back home from this place. You're going to obey God or you're going to obey someone else. Now, my job is not to get you to the point of making a decision. My role is not to answer the question. My task today is simply to get you to ask it yourself. Now, we believe that obedience to God is the surest path to authentic freedom. Do you?